Howdy. Okay, continuing with our topic 6, documentation and warnings. Part 3 is about changing behavior with warnings. So designing written information that will change the behavior of humans who may be doing things whose behavior might otherwise lead to suboptimal system configurations. All right. So what is a warning? A warning is written material designed to convey information about a hazard and what to do to avoid that hazard or to minimize its severity. Okay, so purposes, right? And formally, we inform the user. So we say, hey, there's a hazard. It's possible you might get hurt by this or hurt others. Next, provide information on how likely or how severe is that hazard. Then give me information about how to reduce the likelihood or the severity of this hazard. And then finally, reminding people when and where they may encounter this hazard or where they need to activate their behavior to avoid it. In the next subtopic 6.4, we'll talk about the actual design of warnings. For now, we're just going to be thinking about what sorts of words and what sorts of structure should we use to actually convince people to not do unsafe things. So in order for us to get through to a human might, without this warning, do something stupid and hurt themselves, hurt others, let's change that behavior. How do we get to that point? So we're conveying information to them through our warning messages, but these messages must be sensed. They must be, they must work well with human senses so that they are sensed and then perceived and then received. I received the message, and now I thought about it and I understand what the verbal descriptions are telling me, or I understand what the message is. And now I'm going to decide whether or not I'm going to take that seriously and listen to the advice of the warning and actually change my behavior or avoid unsafe behavior. So is it sensed? Does it work with my eyes? Is it received? Have I read it? Is it understood? Is the language such that I understand the message? And then when I understand the message, do I believe it enough to heed that instruction? Okay, so sensing, this is all about bottom-up influences, really making things more salient so they stand out from the background, so they capture our attention. So there you go, salience being my #1 term here. But things that are larger or different colors or different shapes and stand out from the background that way, these are all ways to make something more salient. Okay, capture my attention. Now receive that. So just because my senses are activated doesn't mean that a warning is received. Just because light strikes my retina doesn't mean I've seen something, right? And the length of a visual warning, if we have a long written series of words that go with, hey, this is a warning, the longer it is, the less likely it would be that somebody will willingly process it. And so look for that real concise, real impactful, short verbal descriptions. And this is an interesting point. When people are familiar with their surroundings and they're familiar with where they think hazards are, they will start to pay less attention to those surroundings because they feel like I'm familiar with them, and it's not an unusual thing. And so when something has novelty, so it's sort of like, oh, there's a brand new warning sign here in my space, that will capture attention just by being different. And so there is some value to, once in a while, we'll put the warning sticker out and then we'll take it back and then we'll put it out again. And just the novelty, the change in that familiar scene is enough to attract attention. So that's one strategy, is temporarily post warnings, really make an emphasis on the novelty in that scenario, and then see what you can do from there. So maybe we give this guy several additional warnings in his space, and let's see if that helps. Okay, so the warning's been received. Now do I understand it? This goes back to the lecture 6.2, where we talk about design for readability and who is your audience. And remember Ogden's Basic English, which we have the full list on Canvas for you to check out. That 850 word list. If you design your warning based on those words, you've done as best you can to communicate to the lowest common, literacy level. Don't use vague or ill-defined terms. Be explicit, be right to the point, and nothing highly technical words or phrases if it can be conveyed simpler. So that's all about readability and being able to understand that verbal message. And oh, this is interesting. So we talked about how based on the literacy constraints, we may be leaning more so towards graphical designs or images that convey more information non-verbally. And there's a bit of a warning there, because while a lot of these graphical icons and common messages that are conveyed via symbols, they're pretty universally used, but some of them are somewhat confusing to a naive human interacting. So this is an official hazard icon for a corrosive hazard. It's going to eat away at your hands if you drip that liquid onto them. But there have been human factors studies that have said, hey, human who's brand new to this job, for example, and hasn't had their safety tutorial yet, when you see this, what do you think? And a lot of people answered, oh, that's where you wash your hands in an emergency context, because this sort of looks like, let's get liquid onto your hands, and this person seems to have put their hands underneath that willingly. So you can see a reasonable misinterpretation here. Is this telling me something is dangerous, or this is telling me where I go when I encounter something dangerous, to take care of my hands? So potentially we maybe need to be a little more explicit with these symbols. Similarly, studies have shown, okay, the eye wash station is not always universally understood. So this is designed to be, hey, here's where you go to, to spray water in your eyes when you have chemicals or you have contaminants in them. But others have seen that and said, oh, that's a warning telling me that whatever the device is there, I might get stuff in my eyes. It kind of looks like particles of sand getting blasted into your eyes. And so, oh, I'm going to stay away from that, which the opposite of what was intended with that message. Okay, and then of course we get other sometimes commonly used but maybe somewhat confusing symbology. And so this is just a joke example of sometimes it makes sense to use words in addition to symbols to make sure you are as clear as possible to the broadest population. Okay, we've got now that message across to our disobedient human, and now we want to convince them that it's in their best interest to listen to our advice or our instructions or our rules. Okay, so will they heed those instructions in the warning? So the factors at play here, is the user capable of heeding that warning? Are you asking them to do something they're physically capable or cognitively capable of doing? Will they remember at the right time and place when they're supposed to activate this behavior? Will there be additional costs with this behavior? Is it going to take me longer? Am I going to be more uncomfortable? Because if either of those are the case, you've got the path of least resistance that's natural to humanity, and you're going to have to take some additional steps maybe to convince people that following these clunky instructions that make me more uncomfortable or take me longer is in my best interest somehow. And then finally, some people are just, not going to take safety advice without challenging it. So the risk, acceptance, the risky, seeking behavior, their attitudes overall, this is going to differ individual to individual. Some people are just going to be difficult, and that may take additional steps beyond a warning in order to, get them to change any unsafe behavior. Okay, so in general, Warnings are there because there's danger in the system, in the environment, and so we look for ways to mitigate that danger. If it's related to product design, our first step here is do the best we can to take anything dangerous about our design and design it out, because it doesn't matter how much we warn humans, there's gonna be somebody who finds a way to do the stupidest thing they can with this thing and potentially hurt themselves. So best option is remove that hazard altogether from the system. If you cannot do that, then let's physically separate the human from the hazard by some sort of barrier, shielding, for example. Third best option, if we can't do that, is we then hello we then post our warnings. Oh, thanks, sweetheart, that's nice. Okay, free kitty moment. All right, so these warnings often are motivated by, not as I mentioned with the previous subtopic on the cover your butt sorts of documentation that might be in terms and conditions sorts of language. Often warnings are motivated because there are humans who want to find the worst way that they could do anything with things. And so we have, as a result, some comedic, wacky warning labels. I hope you can see how some of these are a bit over the top redundant, like, look out if you got this bag of peanuts and you're allergic to peanuts. There's peanuts in it. Some of super obvious sorts of things. But again, these sorts of warnings on product labels are often there because of legal reasons, not because they expect people to read and deeply think about them, but because someone's going to do something stupid, and then this protects the company, or this protects those who are responsible for the human usage of those items. So have a laugh, go to Google, type in wacky warning labels, see if you can find a couple more of these. These are real warnings that have to exist on real products. And with that, that's the end of section 6.3. Thanks.